Welcome to SI Now. It is Tuesday, January 10th, and I'm Maggie Gray. So happy to have you with us. Coming up, former NBA head coach George Karl will be in our studio to discuss his new memoir. But first, about last night. How many times can we say the sequel was as good as the original? Not many. But the Clemson Tigers were able to avenge last year's loss, and they are champions of college football. For more on the game, here is our own Pete Thamel.
This is Pete Thamel, senior writer for Sports Illustrated, on the field in Tampa, where Clemson has upset Alabama, ending their 26-game winning streak, derailing their dynasty, and winning one of the great national championship games in modern college football history. The final, Clemson 35, Alabama 31, and Deshaun Watson is obviously the story of the night. He threw for 420 yards, torching the Tide for the second straight year. But tonight will be remembered for one play and one play only. On the final play of the game, Renfro caught a 2-yard touchdown pass thanks to some creative artistry by his teammate, Artavis Scott. Scott engaged Marlon Humphrey at the line of scrimmage, which allowed Tony Brown to be slowed by a step. Renfro darted to the pylon. Brown was 2 steps late, and the game was over. In the Alabama locker room, they weren't as optimistic about it. They called it a pick play, which is illegal. We saw Notre Dame lose to Florida State 2 years ago on a similar controversial call. No flags flew tonight in Tampa. Only confetti, and it's purple and orange for Clemson. Clemson wins its first national title in 35 years. Dabo Swinney becomes the 5th active coach to win a national title. Clemson 35, Alabama 31. In a rub route, it will be for history.
All right, let's continue the national championship chatter and welcome in former college quarterback and lead analyst for college football on Fox Sports, Joel Klatt. All right, Joel, we just heard from Pete Thamel about the controversial play at the end of the game. Some believe that an illegal pick was missed. So in your opinion, should a flag have been thrown?
No, probably not on the last play. I thought the flag should have been thrown on the pick play that they used previous in the game when Leggett was actually blocking in the end zone and Mike Williams got the touchdown pass. That was the play that I actually thought was more, I guess you could say, letter of the law, a foul. But as soon as that play was not called illegal or offensive pass interference, then no holds barred. You're going to see that play again inside the 5. I thought the mistake from Alabama was the fact that they didn't adjust their defense. They ran the same coverage inside the 5-yard line with the ball on the left hash mark, and Clemson ran a very similar play. So they invited that from a defensive look perspective, and there's no way that you were going to see a flag at that point in the game after not seeing one earlier on what I thought was a much more egregious pick.
That's really interesting, and you mentioned about the defensive deficiencies towards the end of the game. How much blame should Nick Saban get for not at least forcing Clemson to kick a game-tying field goal, Joel?
Listen, I understand that people will be questioning Nick Saban this morning. I mean, this guy is a defensive expert. That's where he cut his teeth. That's where he builds his entire program around. But let's also give him some credit. He was within a second of winning a national championship with a true freshman quarterback that could barely throw the football down the field last night against a very good Clemson team that shut out Ohio State. So it's a pretty remarkable feat of where Alabama actually got. You can call it a failure. I tend to look at it in that more positive vein. Now, where Alabama struggled was the fact that offensively in the second and third quarter, when Bo Scarborough got injured and was no longer available to them offensively, they had an inability to sustain drives. And Maggie, when you can't stay on the field offensively, you're going to see an increased number of snaps on the defensive side of the ball. And that fatigue is what ultimately neutralized the pass rush of Alabama. And then once Deshaun Watson was comfortable, not feeling the pressure of that Alabama front 7, he began to light them up. In the last 2 drives, Deshaun Watson was 9 of 10 for 102 yards and a touchdown because the pass rush wasn't there. It was all about fatigue and Alabama's inability to stay on the field in the second and third quarter with their offense.
Yeah, Clemson took 99 snaps in that game. That's a lot of defense for Alabama to be playing. You mentioned about Bo Scarborough leaving the game and Jalen Hurts really having to take over that offense. Did you see any fall off or drop off? Also with Steve Sarkisian calling the plays as opposed to Lane Kiffin, did that play into this game on the offensive side at all?
You know, I would actually say the exact opposite, Maggie. I thought Sarkisian was brilliant. I'm sure he's going to get a lot of heat, or Nick Saban's going to get a lot of heat for this move at the time in which the move happened. But I will tell you right now, the only reason they scored their last 2 touchdowns last night was because of Steve Sarkisian. He dialed up a couple of brilliant play calls at the perfect time. The O.J. Howard touchdown was essentially a play on the aggressiveness of the Clemson defense, and he dials that up from the sidelines. He calls something that looks like a wide receiver screen, and then O.J. Howard slips down the left sideline, and he ends up scoring a touchdown. Great play call from Steve Sarkisian. And then on the last series, after Clemson had taken the lead, and you think to yourself, offensively, Alabama hasn't done really anything through the air. He was going to have to run a trick play or get lucky in some accord, and he dials up the perfect trick play, or Darius Stewart, the double pass, and they get the touchdown after that trick play. I thought Sarkisian was great. If you were to tell Nick Saban before the game, your first-time coordinator, at least for you, is going to give you 31 points with a true freshman quarterback, would you take it? He would take it and run. The defense just got tired in the end.
One more question about Alabama, the offense. We know, obviously, you just articulated Jalen Hurts and scoring the clutch touchdown late in the game. All in all, though, did he show enough to lock up the starting position heading into next season?
You know, with Nick, I don't think any position is safe, right? Excuse me. Not even Lane Kiffin's position is safe. So we'll see moving forward, right? I think Hurts did a remarkable job this year as a true freshman. He came within 1 second of being the second true freshman ever to win the national championship to only Jamel Holloway. This guy, he showed some serious ice water in his veins with that run late to score a touchdown and give him a lead inside of 2 minutes. He has certainly shown the ability to be a leader, and I think he's just going to improve from here. And that's why going forward to next year, with the depth they've had and built through recruiting, I would say that Alabama is going to be the #1 team in the preseason next year, and in large part because of Jalen Hurts. I know that he struggled throwing the ball in this game, but that's a big stage, and he did some really nice things in that game, including that third down, not conversion, but getting them to 4th and 1 on the last series and throwing across his body. I thought Hurts played pretty well.
Wow, if Alabama starts the next season as preseason #1, that would be bulletin board material for Clemson, considering all the people they have coming back. Okay, we got to talk about Clemson's quarterback, Deshaun Watson, Joel. He put up our adrenaline performance. It is presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Joel, aside from just having the ball last, how did Watson figure out Alabama's defense and avenge last year's loss?
Well, the first thing that they did is they weathered the storm early, and they didn't allow a defensive score from Alabama. Excuse me, that was really crucial. Then moving forward, he got comfortable because of the lack of pass rush, and once he's comfortable in the pocket, he can attack you down the field. He used his legs. He did a great job. Sorry, I lost my voice last night on Facebook. So that being said, I thought Watson did a great job.
That's fantastic. You know, we're going to be talking about this game for quite a long time. In terms of all-time greatest championship games, Joel, where does this one rank for you?
It's up there. I apologize. I'm losing my voice.
If I could hand you water through the computer, Joel, I would do it. But unfortunately, we're about 3,000 miles away from each other.
Okay, so with the 05 championship game, you had great players and great storylines, and that's what I thought you had last night. Great players, great storylines, legacies, quarterbacks. To me, it goes down with the 05 game as the 2 greatest championship games that I've witnessed.
Of course, that's Texas and USC, and of course, Joel, some lozenges and water and tea sent our way. When you get the package, you'll know who it's from. Joel Klatt, it's always great to talk with you, of course, lead analyst for Fox Sports, and that would be for college football. Thank you.
You bet. See ya.
Okay. Now let's turn from the gridiron to the hardwood. Earlier, I sat down with former NBA head coach George Karl to talk about his life on the sidelines, his relationships with his superstars, and a lot more. Coach George Karl, you've written a new book. It's called Furious George, My 40 Years Surviving NBA Divas, Clueless GMs, and Poor Shot Selection. This one's a doozy, George. You had to know that one byproduct of writing this book was that some bridges were going to be burned. But you also write that you still have hopes of coaching in the league again and winning a ring. How hard did you make it for someone to hire you after airing the dirty laundry of places that you had coached in the past?
That's a hard question for me. I mean, I'm on this side of the fence. I'm sure, most of the stories that I think ruffled some feathers are 10, 15, sometimes 20 years old. And what I love about the game of basketball is it evolves. It moves quickly. It evolves into something better, something different, something challenging. And, what happened 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I'm a different person. I think the people I'm talking about are different people. And in a sense, coaching is, we correct, we motivate, we try to, and in a lot of those processes, we criticize. And very seldom my basketball critiquing is it personal. I'm talking about their defense. I'm talking about their attitude towards practice. I'm talking about their enthusiasm. I'm talking about their ability to connect to a team on a given day. And most of all the stories, I would say, have 5 or 10 times more good things that we don't write about, because that doesn't probably make the book as interesting. But I thought, I was out for 2 years working at ESPN, and I just felt the fan knew a lot about the game and deserved to know maybe a little bit more what goes on behind the closed doors, what goes on behind the curtains. Right now we kind of have a kind of a no-talk policy almost, and I'm not sure that's the best way. That's not who I've been throughout my career. I've been fined thousands of dollars for my, sticking my foot in my mouth or saying things that are controversial.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to ask you though about when you say that you felt like your criticisms were mostly about basketball. I mean, they were, but some of them really may not be interpreted that way. Like, for example, when you say of Carmelo Anthony, he was the best offensive player ever coached. He was also a user of people, addicted to the spotlight, and very unhappy when he had to share it. Is that really a basketball criticism?
Yeah, I think it is, because in the locker room, you have a lot of ego, and you have a lot of people that are searching for attention and appreciation by whatever certain parts of it is. And, there are players who are dominant in that area, and there are players who are passive in that area. It comes in different forms in different ways. And, I think Carmelo, and maybe a little bit before that, but the new idea of selling yourself because it's a multi-billion-dollar business started to come into the game of coaching, the game of the locker room. And, we have no control over players, what they do off the court and outside of basketball, but the locker room is still a part of my domain. It's still a part of,
George, you really wanted to control things a lot, though. I mean, and I can understand that being part of your personality. I can see that part being something that probably made you a very effective coach in a lot of ways. But did you ever, stop and think, I'm never going to fully be able to, completely control my players, so I need to find a new way to try to get to them, as opposed to just keep hammering the same way that you had, which you admit in the book on several occasions was probably a mistake?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that you're answering the question for me. I think, I make mistakes. I mean, the evolution of how to coach in this league is totally different than 1980 when I started coaching to today. It's you got 100 different situations and circumstances. The job is bigger. It's more pressurized. The job has more attention. And outside the job, there's more things that can disrupt or just maybe bring some stress to what's going on inside the job.
Right. With all your knowledge, the 40 years in the game, if you could change the way that the structure is, because there are, players like Carmelo and Kenyon Martin and J.R. Smith, you call them AAU babies. I mean, if there was something that you could change about how the league is, what would you want that to be?
Well, I mean, that's a hard question to say because I think, the greatness of the game is its different personalities. The greatness of the game is a coach putting a team together and making them work and making, different personalities. I think the one thing that coaches are driven to win and are driven and motivated to try to be a championship team. And I think today's AAU game or younger game is more directed about maybe individual development and individual process. So it's a conflict. Coaches know it's a conflict. It's not something that you want to be, it's nothing you can be maybe go away, but it's still, the book is Furious, George. I think a lot of what I talk about in the book is the frustrations that I felt. The frustrations maybe not on a daily basis, but almost on a daily basis. You have some type of frustration as a coach. You're not getting to a player, or a player's mad, or the player is injured and you don't know when. There's all types of frustrations that the game brings to the table that I don't think have a lot of time to be talked about, in the normal process of media coverage.
Sure. You write this about one of the frustrations you had when you were coaching Carmelo Anthony was, and this is your quote from the book, the volume of questions about Carmelo eventually wore me down. Sometimes I got so sick of talking about him that I just threw up my hands and said, I don't care what he is and I don't care. Before you said that he didn't want to share the spotlight, that could be interpreted as you not wanting to share the spotlight.
That was the year that he announced before the season that he wanted to be traded. And that was a difficult year. The difficulty was every question was the same, but it was in a different city and by a different writer. And so everywhere you went, even though you answered these questions on Tuesday, you got them on Thursday.
No, I get it, but George, you also say that the questions about Carmelo started right when you took the job in Denver, no?
No, I think that quote, I don't know, I don't remember exactly. The feeling that I felt that tremendously the year that Carmelo asked.
It's not his fault, though. No. That's not a reason to get frustrated with Melo, is it?
Well, I don't think it's Melo's fault. What's the fault is the frustration comes from what has to be done day in and day out, that at times becomes tedious and difficult.
Oh, sure. Sorry, and maybe I should be more clear about it. So, like, when you say to the media, sometimes I just get so frustrated, I'm like, I don't care what he is, and I don't want to answer more questions about him. That could get back to Carmelo Anthony, and it sounds like you're ripping him.
Well, it was the situation, the circumstances of every city you go to. You're getting the same questions, and you're going to have to answer them a different way.
Yeah.
And that becomes tedious.
I want to ask you about a story that's going on in the news right now, because I'd love to get your perspective on it. And this has nothing to do with the book. We'll get back to it in a moment. But it's about what's going on now with Derrick Rose. This is an odd story. It seems like he flew back to Chicago, did not tell the team that he had a family emergency. And people are wondering sort of where he is. In your 40 years of coaching, did you ever have anything like this?
I don't remember anything that specific, but, there are times that players don't come to a practice, or sometimes they come, they call in that they're not going to be able to be at the game. But to be totally AWOL, I don't think I've had that in my career. And I'm sure, the situation will pan itself out, but right now we don't know. We don't know. I didn't even know about it until this morning when I woke up. I didn't watch the Knicks game or talk to anybody about the Knicks last night. I was watching the football game. So.
Yeah, right, and it was a good one. What does that do to a coach, though? What kind of position does it put a coach in? I
call them the energizers. It's and a long time ago there was a book about win-win situations. This is a lose-lose-lose situation. It's a lose for Derrick, it's a lose for the coach, and it's probably a lose for the team. So it creates an atmosphere that de-energizes the team, puts a little weight, heaviness over the team. That doesn't mean they can't fight through it, and that's their job. Their job is to fight through it. But I've talked a lot about trying to talk to players about not bringing negative energy or de-energizers to the team from whatever happens outside of basketball. Try to respect the team as your family and try to win as much as you can by not de-energizing them.
And this is a de-energizing move.
Or it might be easy to, it might pan out to be not de-energized, but it feels right now, from the little bit I know, it's somewhat of a de-energizer.
Well, George Karl, certainly not one to mince words. Make sure to watch the rest of my interview with the always controversial coach tomorrow on SI Now. On to college basketball, a key matchup tomorrow night when 8th-ranked Creighton hosts 12th-ranked Butler. We're going to hear from both coaches starting right now. First up, Greg McDermott, the coach of Creighton. And Coach, we just spoke to George Karl, whose son Kobe was drafted and now coaching. Of course, your son Doug is in his 3rd season with the Chicago Bulls. He's playing alongside future Hall of Famer Dwayne Wade. What has he told you about how different this season has been?
Well, it's been enjoyable for Doug. I think anytime you have a chance to learn from someone like Dwayne Wade, it can do nothing but help you. And just, I think D. Wade's approach to the game, his professionalism, the fact that he's a great teammate, are lessons that are going to stay with Doug, long past this season. And when he becomes a veteran in a few years, the way he treats the younger players on the roster, I think an opportunity to play with a guy like D. Wade and Jimmy Butler has been great for him. Yeah,
that's a high praise for D. Wade and Jimmy Butler as well. Let's talk about your team, all right? They're 8th in the AP poll. It's the highest ranking in school history. What is unique about this group? Why are they the ones who have achieved this milestone?
Well, we found a way to win, and that's the bottom line. And this is a very unselfish group, and Maurice Watson is really our engine. He makes us go in transition. But, we've got capable scorers on the wing and Marcus Foster and Kyrie Thomas. Not only do we have some talent in the starting lineup, we're bringing some seasoned veterans off the bench that understand our system, understand how to play, and have made big plays for us throughout the season.
Maurice Watson obviously leads college basketball in assists so far this season with 9 per game. And then Marcus Foster nearly 20 points per game after transferring from Kansas State. What have you told those two players are your expectation for them as the season moves on?
Well, I challenged Maurice before the season to lead the country in assist, and not often does a coach issue a challenge to a player like that and actually have it happen.
Nice work.
But he's just done an unbelievable job, and he's the consummate point guard in that he sees the floor, he gets his teammates involved, and Marcus Foster is a dynamic scorer. We all saw that when he was at Kansas State. But what he's added, I think, to his game is the ability to get to the rim, to go with a jump shot and step back jump shot and pull up jump shot that he shot so often at Kansas State. And when you add Kyrie Thomas to it, and the fact that you have to guard him with a legitimate defender as well, or he's going to make you pay. I don't know that I'd trade my backcourt for anybody in the country.
I can see why. You lead the country in field goal percentage, 5th in the nation in 3-point field goal percentage. Of course, I mentioned you're hosting Butler on Wednesday night, big conference matchup. It's also dollar drink night at the CenturyLink Center for that game. And, Coach, we know that includes 12-ounce beers, not just soft drinks. What type of atmosphere are you expecting? How could that influence the game?
Well, we've had over 18,000 each of the last 2 games, so it won't be any different tomorrow night. And obviously there'll be a few Diet Cokes sold, but also a few Bud Lights would be my guess. And it'll be an unbelievable atmosphere for college basketball once again, and I think one of the best atmospheres anywhere in the country.
Well, I'll be tuned in on Wednesday night. I want to ask you about a Big East women's game recently. Both coaches were mic'd up for the entire game, and their commentary ran alongside the action from tip-off to the final buzzer. Coach McDermott, what would we learn about you if you were mic'd from tip-off to final buzzer?
Well, number one, I don't know if they ever get me to do it. But I think a lot of the hard work is done in practice. And in a game, your job as a coach is to manage the game, manage your players, and make sure you're doing whatever each one of your individual players needs to try to have them perform at the highest level. And sometimes they need a little kick, and sometimes they need a hug. And it's our job as coaches to make that happen.
I'm curious the answer I would get if I asked your players that same question. But for now, we'll take your word for it, Coach McDermott. We really appreciate your time, and good luck on Wednesday against Butler.
Thank you.
Well, this game features 2 of the better shooting teams in the country. Creighton comes in with a record of 15-1, while Butler is 14-2, including a win over Villanova when they were ranked #1 in the country. So let's hear the Butler side of things and welcome in Bulldogs head coach Chris Holtmann. Coach, I just asked Coach McDermott this question, so I'm going to ask it to you as well. If you were mic'd up for an entire game and we could hear everything that you said, what would we learn about you as a coach?
I would hope that they would learn that for our players. I want our players to relax and enjoy those 2 hours between the lines. I hope they would say, man, he loves his players and he wants them to have a good time between the lines there.
All right, very good. Well, let's talk about this season. In many ways, it's been a series of heart-stopping moments. After a tough loss at St. John's, your team had plane trouble that caused the oxygen mask to be used. Can you describe what happened and just how scared you and the team were?
It was an experience that none of us on the plane had ever experienced. And we had a couple young men that were in their third or fourth time on a plane. So there was, some drama there, and it was a traumatic experience for them, for all of us, but particularly for them. I think the emotions throughout the cabin were, there were a few that were not told, they felt like, hey, everything's going to be fine. And then there were probably the bulk of us that were completely unsure, even us that were experienced travelers. It was an anxious time, and it was you're coming off the heels of a disappointing loss, only our second on the year, but it certainly put everything in perspective.
Absolutely, and maybe even brought the team a little bit closer together, because we noticed you guys are 3-0 since the incident, including a big win against Villanova when they were ranked #1. Let's talk about the game Wednesday. Creighton, they can shoot the lights out, and they're going to have their home crowd behind them on Wednesday. Not sure if you heard this, Coach. It's dollar drink night on Wednesday. How do you slow down? That might not play into the game, but how do you slow down this high-powered offense in what is expected to be a pretty raucous environment?
Yeah, like they need another reason to be loud
right.
in that place. I mean, it's already the probably the hardest or one of the hardest environments to play in on the road in the country, not just our league, in the country. They're a terrific team. They really have it all. They're well coached. They have depth. They have size. They're athletic. They can score on the perimeter. They can make shots. They can score in the paint. They can defend. They are a outstanding team. We're going to have our hands full for sure.
Coach Chris Holtmann. Coach, we really appreciate your time. Good luck Wednesday against Creighton. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Maggie.
All right. That's going to do it for this Tuesday episode of SI Now. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern with more from my conversation with former NBA head coach George Karl. Until then, stick with SI.com for all your latest news, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.